Anne Louise Harmeier was born on August 27, 1957, in Newcastle, Indiana, the only child of Robert and Marjorie Harmeier. Her dad passed away when she was just 4, and from then on, it was just the two of them. Marjorie was a beloved music teacher, known across their small town for giving piano and voice lessons. She and Anne were incredibly close. By 1977, Anne was a junior at Indiana University in Bloomington, majoring in theater. She'd grown up around that campus. Both of her parents had attended IU, and her dad had even gone to law school there. Anne was smart, creative, and kind, with a natural warmth that made people feel good around her. She had a great sense of humor, a strong work ethic, and a spark that everyone noticed. Even now, friends tear up when they talk about her. That September, Anne came home to visit a friend who was in the hospital. She originally planned to head back to Bloomington on Sunday night, but her mom worried about her driving that stretch of highway after dark. So Anne agreed to leave Monday morning instead. On Monday morning, September 12th, she loaded up her rust-colored 1971 Pontiac Le Mans and began her 2-hour drive back to campus to make her 10:30 a.m. class, but sadly she never made it. Somewhere along Highway 37, just outside Martinsville, her car broke down on the side of the road. After that, she was never seen alive again. Friends immediately knew something was wrong when she missed her 10:30 class, because that was very much unlike her. She also failed to call her mother like she had promised. Later that day, she missed a rehearsal at the school theater. Meanwhile, Marjorie had been calling her off-campus apartment over and over, but Anne never answered. At some point that evening, Marjorie and a friend decided to retrace Anne's route to Bloomington, and that's how they stumbled upon Anne's car just before midnight. The car was locked, hazard lights were flashing, and Anne's books and laundry were still inside. Anne was then reported missing. During the investigation, it was learned that Anne had stopped at a couple of gas stations to have them look at her car troubles. It was later determined that the engine radiator had run out of water, causing the car to overheat. For weeks, her family, friends, and the police searched for her. It wasn't until October 18th, over a month later, that a local farmer found her body in a cornfield just west of Martinsville. She was partially buried in a shallow grave. She'd been sexually assaulted and strangled with her own shoelace. Her own hairbrush had been used to tighten the knot. Investigators collected evidence from the scene and followed dozens of leads, but the case quickly grew cold. In the early 2000s, a possible suspect emerged by the name of Stephen Judy, who was a convicted serial killer who'd already been executed in Indiana for the murder of a woman and her 3 children. Judy had a history of similar crimes and operated in the same general area, but investigators ultimately ruled him out because he was in prison at the time of the murder. In 2022, Anne's cousin, Scott Burnham, started digging. He filed Freedom of Information Act request and tried to obtain the full case file, but Morgan County denied access, claiming the case was still open, despite no one being charged, and despite many of the detectives now being unfamiliar with the details. Scott has pushed for transparency and accountability in how the case was handled. Anne Harmeier was murdered on September 12, 1977, and as of July 2025, this case remains unsolved. For more than 2 decades, a mystery lingered in the fields outside Kenton Township, Ohio. It started on December 22, 2001, when 2 men out cutting firewood stumbled across a grim sight. Skeletal remains lying near an old oil well, just 200 yards off a county road. The bones were exposed, bleached by the sun, and weathered by time. There were no clothes, no ID, no personal belongings, just a human skeleton. At first, investigators believed the remains belonged to a black woman, around 5 foot 7 inches, and possibly in her 20s or early 30s. That assumption stuck for years, but DNA would eventually tell a very different story. No one knew who he was. The man was referred to only as Stark County John Doe. In 2023, the Ohio Attorney General's Bureau of Criminal Investigation and the Stark County Sheriff's Office tried a new approach. They released a clay facial reconstruction of the unidentified man and asked the public for help. The image, developed by criminal intelligence analyst Samantha Reeb, depicted a black male estimated to be between 21 and 44 years old. Investigators also worked with Ohio State University's Advanced Computing Center to create digital renderings. Behind the scenes, forensic scientists were busy trying to extract a viable DNA profile from the remains. They managed to build one, but it didn't match anyone in CODIS, the National DNA Database. So investigators turned to the DNA Doe Project. It took months to process, but once the DNA Doe Project launched their genealogical research, it took just 24 hours to find a match. The remains belonged to Anthony Bernard Gulley. Anthony was born on August 31, 1970. Back in September 1994, he was 24 years old, with a steady job as a porter at a local car dealership. When he failed to show up for work one day, his family grew concerned. The next day, his car was found burned out and abandoned in Akron, Ohio, roughly 175 miles from where he was last seen in Pontiac, Michigan. Investigators now believe that Anthony was murdered on or around the time he disappeared. He had been shot twice and, according to authorities, likely killed in a hotel room in Pontiac, nearly 250 miles away from where his body would later be found in that field near Canton. His body had been transported and dumped across state lines, then left to the elements for years. The prime suspect in Anthony's murder was George Frederick Washington, also known as Ricky. He was 22 at the time and had ties to both Michigan and Ohio. Washington had grown up in Akron and was already wanted for 2 sexual assaults and an armed robbery. Detectives in Akron and Pontiac had long suspected him in Anthony's disappearance. In fact, it was the same month Anthony vanished that Washington's name came up in multiple investigations. But the truth about what happened wouldn't come from him. On September 30th, 1994, just weeks after Anthony's car was found, Washington took his own life as police were attempting to arrest him. Whatever secrets he held about Anthony's death, why it happened, how it unfolded, died with him. For years, no one could locate Anthony's body, even though detectives believed it had been dumped somewhere around Akron. Ironically, he had been there all along, left in a field on Trump Avenue Southeast in Canton Township, exposed to the elements, disturbed by wildlife. His bones slowly surfacing as time passed. In September 2023, with Anthony's identity finally confirmed through DNA and genealogical records, officials held a press conference to share the news. Ohio Attorney General David Yost, Stark County Sheriff Eric Weisburn, and others gathered to officially announce what had remained a mystery for more than 20 years. Yost credited the determination of the BCI, the Stark County Coroner's Office, and the DNA Doe Project for finally giving Anthony's family the answers they had long been denied. And for Anthony's daughters, those answers meant everything. Raven Williams was just 3 years old when her father was killed. Her sister Yoshi Carroll was 4. The 2 women are now mothers themselves, raising the grandchildren Anthony never got the chance to meet. Raven and Yoshi were among the family members who submitted DNA to help solve the case, but in the end, it was a distant relative, someone from the South, who had entered their genetic information into an at-home DNA database. That match helped lead genealogists to Anthony's identity. But some questions, like what truly led to Anthony's murder and how he ended up discarded in a quiet Ohio field, may never be fully answered. Still, in the face of uncertainty, one thing is finally clear. Anthony Bernard Gulley was never forgotten, and now, after all these years, he finally has his name back. Heather Danyelle Teague was born on April 25, 1972, the oldest of 4 siblings. She grew up in Kentucky and stood out early as bright, driven, and deeply involved in her school and community. She was on the honor roll, cheered on the sidelines, ran track, played basketball, and was crowned homecoming queen. She even earned the title of Junior Miss. In her downtime, Heather wrote poetry and dreamed of helping people. After taking a break from school, she was planning to study psychology at Western Kentucky University. By the summer of 1995, 23-year-old Heather was living in Clay in Webster County, but life had gotten complicated. She was dating a man nearly 20 years older, and those close to her believed she'd gotten involved with drugs. Her behavior had changed, erratic, unpredictable, and just 2 weeks before she vanished, she had actually been reported missing. When she turned back up, she simply said she'd been running around. Then came August 26, 1995. That Saturday afternoon, Heather drove her 1990 Nissan hatchback out to Newburgh Beach in Spotsville, Kentucky, to sunbathe along the Ohio River. Across the river in Newburgh, Indiana, a man named Tim Walthall was scanning the area through a telescope from his home when he saw something that stopped him cold. A man walked up to Heather, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her off her lounge chair into the woods at gunpoint. Tim immediately called 911. He described the suspect as a white male, about 6 feet tall, between 210 and 230 pounds. The man wore jeans but no shirt, had a bushy beard, brown hair that looked like a wig, and a mosquito net over his head. Even from a distance, it was clear something was terribly wrong. Police responded quickly. They brought in search dogs, divers, and a helicopter with infrared equipment. In the woods, they found a towel and a torn piece of Heather's red plaid bathing suit. A few other items were collected, but none led to her. Investigators questioned Heather's current and former boyfriends, but the interviews didn't turn up anything solid. A local farmer, worried about vandalism, had been recording his fields that day. His footage showed Heather's Nissan, and just down the road, a red and white Ford Bronco. That vehicle was traced to Marvin Ray Marty Deal, a resident of Henderson County. Shortly after Heather's abduction, Deal was pulled over. Inside the Bronco, officers found 2 guns, duct tape, rope, rubber gloves, and hair that looked like Heather's. That same Bronco had reportedly been seen parked near Heather's car on the beach. Deal matched the sketch based on Tim's description, but before police could question him, he told his wife to leave the house, then took his own life. When officers entered, they found his body, but no sign that Heather had ever been there. A grand jury was called to examine Deal's possible involvement. His wife was subpoenaed, but she took the fifth and refused to testify. Years passed. Then, in 2004, another possible suspect surfaced, Christopher J. Below, also from Henderson County. Below had already pleaded guilty to attempted involuntary manslaughter in the 1991 death of 28-year-old Catherine Fetzer, a woman from Ohio he'd been having an affair with. Catherine vanished in November 1991, and her body was never found. Below claimed her death was an accident during an argument, but he admitted to disposing of her body. He served up to 18 years in prison as part of a plea deal. Authorities started to suspect Below might be connected to other missing women. Mary Cousteau, who vanished from St. Cloud, Florida on May 5, 1995. Below was in the area at the time. Christina Porco, who disappeared from Hilton Head Island, South Carolina in 1986 after a fight with her mother. Shailene Farrell, who went missing in Piqua, Ohio on August 8, 1994, after she failed to show up for work. All of them, like Heather, had a similar build to Catherine Fetzer. Investigators believe Below had a type. He was reportedly in the area when Heather was abducted, and he left town the same day Marty Dill died. Some believe the 2 men may have worked together, one abducting Heather, the other driving the getaway vehicle. Below has refused to answer any questions about Heather's case. Heather's mother, Sarah Teague, has never stopped fighting. In 2007, she had Heather legally declared dead in order to obtain FBI records. In 2013, she filed a lawsuit against both the FBI and Kentucky State Police, accusing them of mishandling the case, focusing solely on Dill while ignoring other potential suspects. She also pointed out that Dill was reportedly clean-shaven and balding at the time of Heather's disappearance, nothing like the man Tim Walthall saw through his telescope. The lawsuit was dismissed. A judge ruled that malfeasance, being a criminal offense, couldn't be tried in civil court in Kentucky. But Sarah didn't give up. She filed FOIA request, pushed for DNA testing on physical evidence, and obtained the original 911 call Walthall made. She also secured a taped conversation between Dill's attorney and the Kentucky State Police, where the lawyer warned officers not to confront Dill without him present. They did it anyway. In 2012, Heather's case was featured in a deck of cold case playing cards distributed through Kentucky prisons in hopes that an inmate might come forward with new information. Then in 2024, the case got a fresh push. An anonymous donor offered a $10,000 reward. A special prosecutor was appointed, and Heather's bathing suit bottoms were sent to an independent lab in Virginia for advanced DNA testing. As of July 2025, those tests are still underway. Officials recently confirmed that the lab is actively examining the fabric using updated, more sensitive methods, including touch DNA and high-sensitivity amplification, which can detect the faintest biological traces. But so far, no official results have been released. Heather Teague was last seen on August 26, 1995, and as of July 2025, she remains missing and her case remains unsolved. Jennifer Lynn Pandos was born on October 29, 1971. By the time she was 15, she was living with her parents in the gated Kings Mill community of Williamsburg, Virginia. Most people knew her as Jenny, or sometimes Jeeper. She was a sophomore at Lafayette High School, didn't use drugs, and wasn't in trouble at home or at school. But on the morning of February 10, 1987, she was just gone. That morning started off strange. Her mother, Margie, went to check on Jennifer because it was unusual for her not to be up for her shower, but her bedroom door was locked, which was something she never did. After knocking and getting no answer, Margie and her husband, Ron, forced the door open. Inside, the bed was made. Her coat and personal belongings were still there, but Jennifer wasn't, and on her pillow they found a note, a strange handwritten note. It started in the third person. "Your daughter's with me. She's fine. She's having some problems and needs some time away." Then it abruptly switched to the first person. "I'm fine. I just need time to think. Both of you please go to work tomorrow, because I will try to call you. I won't call you at home, only at one of y'all's work. Do not call the police. I can easily find out if you do. I may never come back home. Don't tell my friends about this. Just tell them that I'm sick." The handwriting was large and awkward, definitely not typical of Jennifer. Still, Margie insisted it was her daughter's writing. Some speculated that Jennifer, who was left-handed, may have written it with her right hand to disguise it. Others believed someone else wrote it, or that she was forced to. Strangely, Ron and Margie didn't report Jennifer missing right away. In fact, they waited 3 full days. In the meantime, they gave her friends and neighbors mixed stories. Said she was sick or had gone away for a few days. Anything but the truth. By the time police were finally brought in, there wasn't much to go on. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle, no phone calls, no sightings, no solid leads. Jennifer had taken only her purse. She'd even left her coat behind, and it was cold outside. Former Deputy Chief Steve Rubino said that there was no immediate evidence of foul play. On paper, it looked like a runaway, but something felt off. Jennifer's older brother, Stephen, was away at college when it happened, and right away he had doubts. He suspected his parents, especially their father, Ron, a Vietnam veteran who struggled with PTSD. Stephen said their dad had a violent temper and that life at home had been anything but calm. As the years passed, Stephen became convinced Jennifer had died during an argument with Ron and that Margie had helped cover it up out of fear. It was a theory that gained traction, not just with Stephen, but with other relatives and even some investigators. The case was reopened in the 2000s, but somehow the original case files had vanished. Evidence that should have been placed in police custody, like the note, had never been turned in. Margie still had it. When she eventually handed it over, it raised even more questions. Why wasn't it submitted sooner? Why did it take years for her to notify police after moving out of state? And why did both Ron and Margie fail polygraph test? Jennifer's childhood friend, Woods Woolwine, remembered how unsettled the neighborhood was at the time. People were tense. One of Jennifer's friends even claimed to have been on the phone with her the night she disappeared and overheard a heated argument between her and her father. Still, Ron and Margie maintained their position. Jennifer had run away, and for years, Stephen lived in limbo, haunted by what he didn't know and frustrated by what he couldn't prove. In 2015, Stephen reached out to filmmaker Cynthia Hill. Together, they began work on Burden of Proof that followed Stephen's 8-year search for answers. At first, he was convinced his parents were responsible, but as new evidence came to light, his certainty began to shift. Old letters surfaced, supposedly written by Jennifer to an ex-boyfriend. They revealed a more emotional, conflicted side of her. Handwriting experts reviewed the original note and cast doubt on the idea that either Ron or Margie had written it. Attention soon turned to Jennifer's former boyfriend as a person of interest. But again, no arrest, no resolution. What started as a mission to expose family secrets evolved into something deeper, a complicated search for truth. As the investigation unfolded, Stephen had to face the possibility that his theory wasn't the full story or even the right one. Burden of Proof ended up being less about guilt and more about grief, less about answers and more about what happens when families are left in the dark. As Cynthia Hill put it, the real story was about how suspicion tore the Pandos family apart and how one man kept digging, trying to make sense of it all. Today, Stephen says he no longer knows what happened to his sister. The case is still open, still unsolved. There's no body, no solid evidence, no closure. But he says he's made peace with one thing, knowing he's done everything he could to find the truth. Maybe someone out there knows more. Maybe someone stayed silent all these years. The hope now is that the right person will finally speak up, and that one day Jennifer Pandos will finally come home. Jeremiah Moneta was born on February 21, 2002. At just 22 years old, he was stepping into a new chapter of his life in Ponca City, Oklahoma. He'd recently relocated from Kansas City, Missouri, after the devastating loss of his uncle, the man he'd been living with and looked up to. The move gave Jeremiah a fresh start, and he embraced it with hope. He moved in with his mom, Jamie Hansen, and though he was nervous at first about living on his own, he adapted quickly. He got a job, started furnishing his first apartment, and was building the kind of independence that made his family proud. But that fresh start soon turned into every family's worst nightmare. Jeremiah was last seen on January 15, 2025. He had told his mom he had to work that Saturday, so they postponed their Walmart trip to finish getting things for his apartment. That would be the last time she'd ever hear from him. Jeremiah was reported missing on January 20th, after his family searched for him on their own for 2 days. Police say he was last seen near North Pine Street and West Cleveland Avenue in Ponca City. Some of his belongings, including his phone and his asthma inhaler, were found scattered in different locations. His inhaler was discovered on a stranger's porch, and for anyone who knew Jeremiah, that was a serious red flag. He never went anywhere without it. Even more concerning, a woman later called Jamie saying she had Jeremiah's old phone and inhaler. When Jamie texted Jeremiah's new phone to tell him, the message showed up as read, but there was no response. When the family tried calling, someone would pick up and immediately hang up. Eventually, that same woman claimed Jeremiah had sold her the phone for $20, but Jamie and her husband, David Cordell, didn't buy it. If that was true, David said, she would have just said that the first time. Jeremiah's bank account hasn't been touched since he vanished. He also stopped showing up for work, completely out of character for someone so dependable. Police have said there were no signs of a struggle at his apartment, and at this point, there's been no confirmed sighting of him since January 17th, 2 days after his last known conversation. Some of his personal items were found in the 400 block of North Union. There were also unconfirmed reports he may have been seen near 2nd Street and Summit Avenue, or at a liquor store on West Highland. His main form of transportation was a bicycle, but that too seems to have disappeared with him. In the weeks that followed, Jeremiah's loved ones organized search parties, hung flyers, and pleaded publicly for help. A search was conducted near White Eagle based on a tip, but nothing turned up. Jamie is now planning a candlelight vigil and celebration of life, not to say goodbye, but to raise awareness and money for a reward. The family refuses to give up hope. Jeremiah was last seen wearing a gray Kansas City Chiefs hoodie and jeans on January 15, 2015. And as of July 2025, he remains missing, and this case remains unsolved.